back to another episode of the Miles House Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter B. Gunn, and I'm here with our current artist in residence, Nani Chacon. Well, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, thank you.
Of course, anytime. Well, today is your final day of residency. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
How have you enjoyed it so far? Well, I guess now that you're at the end.
It's been a really nice day. It's really interesting for me to visit other people's homelands, see their communities, connect with different people. It's been really, really nice just to be in a different environment. I've been working on a series about water and kind of doing something I've never done or ever pictured myself doing, but kind of doing these like plein air illustrations or drawings, and it's been really refreshing just to be in a different landscape, but also a landscape that is ancestral homelands for Shinnecock people.
So you have been living in New Mexico, correct? I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely vastly different there than it is here. But if you had to name like one thing that's like the biggest difference between
water,
the water.
Yeah, I'm New Mexico. Where I'm from is the desert. The water that exists is from seasonal rainfall. Of course, we have rivers and lakes and ponds and things like that, but their I guess abundance and their depths depend on how much rainfall we get, and we do live in a droughted climate. So water, the relationship to water is very different, and we look and we see water, we feel water very differently. I can feel water very much so just being here, like in my skin and in my hair and in my eyes. All of it feels really different. Like I can taste it. I can taste the salt in the air all the time. So yeah, to me that's the biggest difference, of course, because you guys are surrounded by water.
It's so interesting. My entire life I've been surrounded by water. I've only ever been to the desert like once in my life. I don't even think about it. Just look over to the left, or like you can hear the ocean if you just go outside, which is amazing. So can you tell us a little about what you do as an artist? Yeah,
I'm a painter. All of the paintings I do are large scale paintings. I do some illustration work. Most of the paintings that I do are public work pieces as murals, and those majority of those murals are community engaged work. So I'm creating the content by working with groups of individuals, and the pieces are always in conversation with landscape and the communities, the people that reside in proximity to the piece.
So, well, my favorite piece of your art, which you may know, but I'm a little biased because it features my cousin Kelly. You talked about a little bit of your artist talk, but a lot of those people may not have a chance to listen to that. Could you tell us a story about how you ended up picking Kelly for that?
How I ended up picking Kelly? Well, it wasn't necessarily just picking Kelly for that piece. That work is actually a prelude piece to a much larger work that featured many community members. Most people from Queensbridge, some people from Queensbridge projects, other people kind of based in Queens, but from other parts of like the greater New York area. And then other members, we had other members from Shinnecock, Matinacock nations. And Kelly, for that prelude piece, we really wanted someone who signified active change. And at the time she was a young female council member, which I believe was the first time that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's also a lawyer. It just seemed to me like herself as a person was really embodying the ideas that we had around how communities and members activate their own sovereignty within their cohorts of people, within their groups that they create, to create active change. So we decided to use her as kind of the entry point of this piece, but there was many other people. This work is at this point, it's not complete, and we hope to get it complete within the next couple of years, but there are many other people that'll be recognized as well.
Awesome. So when you're working on such a big piece of art, how long does that take, like including like the planning? Like, do you do it with like quadrants? Does everyone get like a quadrant they have to do? Or how does something like that work?
That piece was a collaborative work, and I had two other artists that I worked with on that piece, like Juanunia Wire and Tatiana Falizdeda. And we just kind of worked collectively. Like, we just kind of looked at what needed to be painted and we painted it. And when we were done with that and there was something else that needed to be painted, we just kind of tackled it. Some things, somebody may have started it and kind of had a good hand on it, so we were just like, you finish that, you keep going with that. It went really smoothly. I mean, both of them are very, very accomplished painters, very skillful painters, so it just flowed. We just kind of attacked it. Most of my other murals, I actually, that's the first time that I've ever collaborated with other artists on a single piece. Most of the time I'm the lead artist, although I do have sometimes like an assistant who helps me out, but it's under my direction and discretion of what they do. So yeah, mostly I'm just kind of, I just kind of follow my own method, and I work from the top, go to the bottom, sometimes left to right, or sometimes I tackle the most difficult things in my mind first, and then leave the things that I know I can paint really fast and easily for the last.
Interesting. Do you always start from the top if you can?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting. I definitely would start from the bottom, but that should...
Yeah, it helps with drips. If you drip something, then, you're not making a big mess.
That's so smart, I guess. Yeah. Wow, that makes so much sense. If I ever am a part of a mural, I will definitely suggest starting from the top. Are you afraid of heights at all?
No.
No? Okay. Because I've had to help with the mural, and I went up top, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you kids, you definitely can't be afraid of heights if you're going to paint anything really too big. I mean, there's definitely murals that only exist on ground level and maybe go up only 6 feet or something, or 8 feet.
Yeah, even 6 feet, I'm scared. Once I get up there, then I'm 11 feet high. It's just scary. So it's pretty amazing that you guys are able to just go up on ladders or the scaffolding. Right. Just do what you guys do. So, one thing I saw when I was doing research is there's a hotel room that you painted that people can actually stay in.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That was just like a commission. There's this hotel in Albuquerque had started commissioning artists to kind of paint an entire hotel room and make it, I don't want to say thematic in a way. I think when I was first described the project, it sounded like a lot more interesting than what it came out. Although I do really like what I painted in there. I think it came out beautifully. Really kind of not the typical kind of work I do. It's funny because it's attached to a hotel, it gets a lot of press and it gets out there, but not the projects I normally enjoy taking on because they're very corporate. But It was fun, and it was interesting to think about design, think about the inclusiveness of a room as opposed to just a wall. Because it's a livable space, so you're thinking about all four sides of it rather than just one side. And then the room itself is then the environment. So yeah, that's about it.
I thought that was so cool. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Yeah. Okay, so also when I was looking you up, you've done so much in your career, and I had never seen someone with their own special tab on Google.
Does that exist?
Yeah, I had no idea, but it was called so when you look you up, you have a tab and you click it and it's just called resist.
Oh yeah. Oh, interesting.
And
so it goes to that mural?
Yeah, it goes to that mural, and there's
cool.
a ton of stuff. It's just anything that has to do with the resist mural. It has its own tab, and I've never seen that before.
I've never seen that. I don't know. I don't know how Google works, because I was trying to even just get my website to pop up when you type in my name, and that was not happening.
And it wasn't working?
But yeah, there's a ton of other stuff, out there. And yeah, I've been doing stuff for a while, so definitely I think the publicness of work leads to a lot of people talking about the work itself. And I mean, that's exactly why I choose to work that way, is because they're pieces that are meant to be living. They have a time limit. I want them to generate conversations. And I know, at least with the murals, a lot of the times I get, I've had people send me videos because they wanted to recite poetry in front of it, or they wanted to include it in their independent film, or just all of these different things, or they wanted to tie it into an essay that they're writing because it has the same and I love that. I think that that's how the work is in conversation with communities, and that's what I want to happen.
So, that's such an interesting way to think about it, because I want to make films and just thinking I have a street that I want and someone's art is there, that's also going to be in the film. And then how does that now I'm thinking how would that work? Do I have to pay people to pay you if someone's making a film that's there?
That happens a lot. I mean, definitely artists should get paid when their work is used. Mm-hmm. At any point. But for independent, if I don't know, Netflix hits me up and wants to, do a major shot with my work in it, I think that they should pay artists, or they should pay me. If it's somebody who's making a very low budget film and they're nice, I'd probably just be sure, it's fine. Yeah, I don't know.
Being nice goes a long way, everybody.
It goes a long way.
So one other thing I noticed is you have a Wikipedia page, which you're only second person I've ever had on here who has their own Wikipedia page, which is pretty cool. And on there, it said you had a mural in Russia.
Yeah.
How on earth did that happen?
That was really interesting. I was part of a traveling exhibition that was going through, I want to say some of the other states in Russia. I think when we think of Russia, we were always thinking of Moscow and St. Petersburg, but it was kind of going into the smaller regions and in the vastness of Russia. And in Ishvak, the curator who had curated that show had shown him my work, and they were interested in having a mural on the outside of their city gallery. And they really liked the content and the way that I was approaching work, the inclusiveness of Indigenous identity, Indigenous culture, and kind of having that be a central part of the content. And the Indigenous people of Ishvak our Udmurt. And so it was really creating a work that was inclusive of Udmurt culture. And it was really, really interesting because, of course, I'd never been there. I didn't know anything about these people or about their nation, but got to learn. And it was really beautiful just to see kind of similarities across the world, like literally across the world. And the piece that I made is about that, about it's called Migrations, and it's about like they have a scarf that they wear in Russia, and that scarf, we see it a lot in our indigenous communities. It's like this very specific floral pattern scarf, and it has its origins there. And it's kind of interesting how aesthetic beauty can change and also communicate amongst people. And so that's basically what the work is, the mural is created about. And that was interesting because, of course, I was out there for, I think, about 3 weeks or so, almost a month, working on the piece, and then also did a lot of other things. And I'm just always amazed how you could travel somewhere totally different and not like anything you've ever experienced, so far away from home, and then still find so many similarities and commonalities with people. And it was just a very beautiful time. I had my son with me. He traveled with me out there, and, spent a lot of days painting, but also got to see some other things in the city. So really nice. I just actually got like a photo the other day. Every now and then somebody from Russia will like send me a photo through Instagram, and it's like always super cool because it's just active, it's there, and it's nice to see Ishvek and just different ways and lights, and it's really, really an incredible place. I really loved Russia. One of the nicest places I've ever been. One of the, like, where people were just very nice, hospitable. I really felt comfortable and at home.
So a couple non-art related questions, but how did you end up discovering Ma's house?
I discovered Ma's house because we had, it was through the project that we had begun at PS1. We were really wanting to be inclusive of Shinnecock Nation, and had met Tecumseh first and had did some community meetings with some of the people. I think Jeremy, we ended up collaborating with Jeremy as a photographer and gave him some directions on taking photos because it was really difficult to coordinate. We were, of course, in New York, and then out here it's like a 2-hour ride. So it really felt like demanding and a lot on either side to have people go out to New York or find the times, because of course I'm traveling into New York to do this project, and then one of the collaborators is from Newark, and we're just kind of all over in that regard too. So I believe it was Tecumseh that had recommended Jeremy and said, he could take a photo. And we looked at his work and we were like, oh yeah, he totally can take a nice photo. So we gave him directions on what we wanted, and kind of to keep in line with the other photographs that we had been doing of people. And he did a great job. I mean, and from that just kind of bridged a friendship. I came out and did a site visit, also to just be grounded. We weren't able to come out here when we did our community meetings. It was during COVID that we started those, and kind of in the year after. So there was still a lot of restrictions and protocols so people wouldn't get sick, and definitely respecting that on tribal lands of, the strictness of how COVID could spread. So we didn't want to do that. All of our community meetings that we did were over Zoom. And so when things were better, last year when I was actually painting it, took the time to do a site visit and just meet Jeremy. And he had told me about Ma's house, and they had just begun kind of starting it. And so yeah, me and the education curator at PS1 came out, and it was really great. I thought, wow, this is really beautiful. It's really interesting. And then decided to do the residency this year just because I had started this project, and really thought about places that I would want to spend that cultivated time doing basically like experimental drawing studies, and that would facilitate that. And then places too that are like, I feel that water is still uninhibited. It's not, it's there, it's not restricted. And that is something very special about how the lands have been preserved around, how the waterways have been preserved around the reservation. And it's a different experience to experience the ocean, to experience beaches, in that way, because, and I went to like some public beaches while I was out here too. And it's just like the experience is so like drastic, because in one regard you can be somewhere and just there's nobody else around you, and it's just you and water and sand and whatever creatures and critters are out there. And I feel like it even smells different, it sounds different. And then you go to a public beach, and I think I noticed being at the public beach probably more than I ever had, is that one, that's very noisy, and two, I think that even though we go to these places, I think human nature is to socialize. And I actually think that people are maybe even uncomfortable with like the expansive nature. So they do things to occupy that experience, like play music and, bring a bunch of food and, like a bunch of accessories and things like that. It has to be kind of this experience. So being able to experience the ocean in kind of a minimal fashion and draw it and spend that time was really, really unique and special to hear. And I'm happy I did that, was able to do that.
I even saw you at the beach.
You saw me at the beach, yeah.
I didn't even recognize you. It's so bright at the beach, I couldn't see. That's like my problem.
And I was probably just like all dirty and tired.
It's amazing. Grabbing something at the beach. When you mentioned that it's so expansive, the ocean is one of the only things I think you can't stop. Like water in the ocean, especially the ocean, like they will take you away. Mm-hmm. Go a little too far, you're just gone forever. And then if you let water drip on anything long enough, you'll go right through. So it's very interesting. Water is the only thing you can't stop.
It's true.
So this question is actually from my mom, now that you've brought up what you're working on now, but she was interested on knowing like what is the next thing you have working on in your mind, I guess, like next project, if you're allowed to share that.
I mean, this is a project that I will be working on. And it's kind of like in its beginning development stages. I really wanted to, I think there's certain points that, you just have to try different things. I always feel like you got to try new things. You have to try new ways of learning and, practicing. So I am starting this. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go or what its final form is going to be. But I would say that this is like a beginning of something, which is fun. And sometimes when I start series of work, like the last series of work, I worked on it for 5 years before, it accumulated into like 10 paintings, so sometimes there's stages along that process. So yeah, I mean, I can't say like, oh, this is something I'm trying more and more not to work with every project. Some projects, of course, have a timeline and they have a deadline, and you think of it in those terms. But I think it's always important also to have things that you're thinking about continually, and you work on and you try, um, because it keeps you inquisitive, it keeps you fresh, keeps you kind of thinking in different layers. So yeah, that's one thing. And then back home, um, I've been working on this pretty involved project, another collaborative piece, but with two scientists, computer scientists, and we've been creating these interactive murals, I want to say, public art pieces. And that's just been really challenging. It's been a really different way. Um, it's been just like a really different way to think about space and to think about the interaction of audience, and how to combine those things as necessary content within the work. Like if we have something that you can touch or feel or lights up or sounds or any of these, like how is that so essential to the content of this piece, as anything else would be? So that we're not just being additive without, um, or adding cool stuff. I mean, we could do that all day, um, for the sake of it, but really because it's essential. And it's been really interesting to think about the computer programming mindset and the capabilities of it and how we then transform that into public work pieces. So we have a piece that we're working on currently. I will go back when I leave here. I'll go back and we should be like within the finishing touches of it, and then we'll have the unveiling for it in early August. So yeah, so that's kind of the next thing that is there.
That project is pretty amazing.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed. How did you even get? So I guess kind of part of that is how did you get those scientists on board? Did you know them already? Were you talking to them?
No, Leah had been making work like this. She had been, um, she has a very interesting studio and practice and does a lot with computer programming and creating art with it. A lot of it, like, there's just so many facets of what she does. But this one in particular, she had started making work like this, but it was a little bit more, I want to say like the first ones that I saw were kind of like on the lines of maybe interactive like wallpaper in a way. Like it would be this very cool pattern and you could touch it and then maybe it would like make the lights in your house come on, or different things would light up and not light up, but it was really missing kind of that artistic content. And she had just really wanted to expand that practice and work with an artist, who understood like the enormity of scale, how to paint, and then also like putting in all of these other factors. And it was really, really interesting because I had actually the first mural that I created was a piece that embedded in the work was a low powered FM transmitter. And I had kind of this like intersection between art, technology, and public art at that time. And it was into like kind of woven into the concept of recognizing that airwaves and transmissions are like all around us and we don't necessarily understand those implications. So to use that in a way that was in line with Indigenous philosophy and in line with the way that we implement prayer, we implement healing. And so what was broadcast through the transmitter was the end of our prayer, which says to continue on in beauty. It's like a very positive way to leave people or to wish people. And that was like my way of like taking a small section of airway that I could control and putting the most positive thing out there from it. And then also capitalizing on an audience, like knowing that my audience would be captivated in that space and like how I would implement them with the best thing that I know, right? So I did that piece, and it was interesting, and there was my sister had helped me with it. My sister builds transmitters, and she has knowledge about kind of like circuitry and how we would do this. And it was really, really interesting. And then here we go, you know, I want to say like 10 years later from that piece, and kind of revisiting some of the same concepts. You know, how do we make this very much entwined into the work? How do we make it essential to the work? And then how does this work also become the tool and the mechanism? Like how does the mural become reflective of the technology that it holds? So yeah, so where all of that is also kind of, you know, these works in progress. We've done three of them so far, and I think the one that we're currently working on that will be at the National Hispanic Cultural Center is a semi-permanent installation. I think that one is my favorite.
I definitely want to go check them out. They seem very cool.
Yeah.
I do have a question about the first piece of art with the radio transmitter. So if it was transmitting a radio wave, so like people tune into that? They
could. I mean, if anyone was like going to go down there with like their boombox, like they could definitely pick up a radio wave and it would be there and they could hear it. The intent wasn't necessarily that people hear it. The intent was more so that it exists. Mm-hmm. So us acknowledging that with or without us hearing something or using it, like this laptop here, this battery generator here, all of these things, your phone, our phones, cell phones, TVs, all these things are emitting waves upon us that are acting upon us. And I don't think we fully understand the implications of that yet. I think our ancestors did. I really do. I think that they utilize that knowledge in ceremony and prayer. I think they had knowledge of how spectrums and radio waves worked. I mean, why wouldn't they? They understood the stars, you know, like as maps. We understand them as pretty things. They look nice in the sky. Yeah. So it was much more about recognizing airwaves as a natural element than it is necessarily about hearing it. But because I got asked that a lot, like, who's gonna go down there with a radio? And it's true. Like, I mean, you definitely could go down there with a radio, but it wasn't necessarily the entire purpose of the piece.
Mm-hmm. I really like that piece now, because now I kind of understand. It's like the whole thing with talking to plants is kind of like nice for them, and kind of can affect the water. They sound waves can affect the water. Would that like affect, and like we're made of water, so having something nice being said,
yes,
at least something nice is being said over there, could help affect you in a good way. That's really cool. I didn't even think about it like that at first. Okay, so I want to go back. I know you started as a street artist, like graffiti. How did you get into that, really? Into that realm of art? What made you pick that?
I was just fascinated by it. I would say, you know, as a teenager, I got really into a group of friends that were like kind of into counterculture aesthetics and activities like skateboarding and just like punk rock and, just kind of these, other doing these other things in life, expressing themselves in other ways. Wasn't really like, I wasn't with the cheerleader crowd or the sports crowd, most of my friends were like skaters. And I would say that probably that was like how I got exposed to graffiti first, and then through music. But out in New Mexico, we have these like diversion channels that run throughout the whole city, because we're in a drought. When it rains, it tends to flood rather fast because the water can't absorb so quickly. So they have to have a way to divert it to the river from the mountain. So we have these very huge diversion channels called arroyos all over the city, and they're just like big concrete waterways. And because there's so much concrete in them, like my friends who would skateboard would go down there and skate them. And some of them that they would skate also like had graffiti in them. So we would, I'd go with them to like hang out with my friends, watch them skate. And then every now and then we'd come up and there'd be just like a ton of graffiti in different places. And I just loved it. And it was one of those things that like, I didn't see it until I saw it. And then once I saw it, I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop noticing graffiti everywhere. And then just at some point, I don't know, I always think if you like want to do something or try something, you just have to do it. You can't think about it too much. Like just do it and say you're that. And, I want to be a guitarist, so I'm going to just play the guitar, because if I don't, I'm never going to do it. So yeah, I just did that. I just decided one day, like, I'm going to write graffiti, and, just picked a name and started doodling and trying stuff. And then, it just snowballs from there. People are like, oh, wow, you write. What do you write? Do you want to go paint with us? And, you just get better and better and better. So, but I was pretty obsessed. I got pretty heavily, I was just obsessed. I loved it. It was the thing that taught me how to draw. It was the thing that taught me how to paint, how to think about color, scale, all of the things, how to really critique myself amongst my peers, and to really look at art. I mean, I didn't think about those things at the time. I was just having fun and was, found a community and was into something. But really it taught me a whole lot of formality, how to document my work, whole lot of formalities about art practice. So I really got to give it so much credit. Like, it just is one of those kind of ways of creating work that is so rapid and elevated, and kids are the ones that are doing it. So but that always carried on to my practice. I'm a much better drawer on a large scale. It feels better for me. I feel like I feel more comfortable painting in that way than I do on a small scale. And I think that's like directly related.
It's so cool. So I actually tried doing graffiti a couple weeks ago. I guess this does not graffiti since it's not outside. But that's graffiti inspired, all spray paint, that Lamas house thing over there.
Like a stencil.
Yeah, I did all stencils. Cool. So that's one of the questions. Were you using lots of stencils?
No stencils.
All freehand?
No, I didn't paint. Like right now as a muralist, everything I do is like it's very illustrative, and I paint and I render and I can do a portrait and all these things, and it's very illustrative. But when I did graffiti, it was really abstract. It was all names. It wasn't, and letters. It wasn't really a whole lot of, sometimes I'd work with other people and, we'd throw a character in there, or something, cartoon character or something that we made up. But like, it really wasn't any of, it was just letters, like letter stuff. And yeah, not really on the street art tip. Like, no, I didn't do wheat paste also, and I didn't do stenciling or anything like that. It was just, and it, at that time, I mean, it was also very like primitive in a way. Like right now, it's with spray paint, there's so much access and there's all these colors, and everything is very nice. You have these, like, I trip out. I use them every now and then when I paint, but like even these like transparent spray paints and like all these different kind of capacities of spray paint, because people, there's like a business for that. Like back then it was, you went to the hardware store and you bought spray paint that people would use to like spray paint the table or the chair, and then you found where to get different caps and nozzles off of other household appliances, and you'd steal those because you couldn't buy them, or sometimes you could in a graffiti magazine. But it was just a really different culture. I remember trying to make colors I had a friend who was like a very technical spray painter, and he would always mix his own colors, and like made this little rig to like push the paint of one can into another can, so that way he could make a different color out of it. It's like really interesting. Yeah, so there is a lot of stuff like that I learned just out of sheer obsession, and my peers were doing stuff because they had learned from people, and it was really like this like kind of secret exchange at the time. All of those things to me were wildly fascinating. Like it felt like every time I got to learn something new, it just made me more and more invested.
There's it's a whole world. It's very interesting. One thing, so some of the greatest pieces of art I've seen have been graffiti. Growing up near New York City, so close, go in on the train, you see so many things on the walls. And around here, one thing I've always noticed is there's like no graffiti, just so weird, to me at least. And I was just thinking, like, what happens if someone does start tagging stuff around here, like in Southampton, not Shinnecock. Shinnecock, people are not going to. There probably is some place where people have done that, but like in the town of Southampton, I think it's so weird that there's so many people there, especially in the summer, and no one is doing any graffiti at all. And I could see.
I mean, I have only been here for like a short amount of time, but to be honest, I don't see a lot of teens out here, or like a lot of young folk.
There are not.
I can't. Yeah, so I can't imagine like old dude with the yacht is gonna care to do any type of graffiti in his neighborhood, because he's why would you like you don't. One, I think it's just maybe not the mentality, and also the space. I grew up in a really like beautiful place. It was beautiful. It was like kind of this farming community that was out at the edge of Albuquerque, and there's like a lot of trees and stuff. People had farms, and it was very diverse at that time. People that lived there, like there wasn't like one class of type of person, and really old Hispanic families, white families, like just really, really diverse area. And even when I got into doing graffiti, I never wanted to like do it there, because it was just like small, and it didn't seem like it helped. There is something about a city And I think the liveliness of the city and the movement of the city that really caters to the action of it. Graffiti is always in action. It's always moving and changing. And, to like, I wouldn't be interested in like putting it on a tree or something like in a beautiful forest. I'm like, no, just leave it. Like, it's more radical to not touch it. But in a city is like, a city is already colonized. A city's already like, asserting its own space. And you're just like, for me, it began to be a little bit about thinking about taking back or maybe equalizing ownership and thinking about how I exist in a space that doesn't want to see me. I don't think that works the same. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go out to my res and I already feel seen. I already feel held. I already feel valid in those spaces. So like, I don't need to exert that kind of energy there. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, Southampton. I'm sure that there's probably some kid somewhere obsessed, probably looking at all the sites and knows all these writers and loves it and practices and does his own things. But I don't really see kids in general. I think I'm like, I don't know what kids do, and
I don't know where they are.
Some of that too. Also, I do feel. Because this has always been a big source of inspiration and why I respect Ma's house is I've always had a lot of reverence towards DIY spaces and people who create their own spaces and communities. I think that's really special. And some of that, like in Albuquerque, we have a lot of DIY spaces, like from music venues to art galleries, and it just comes out of needing these things to exist, but not waiting or needing like a corporate model or even a monetary model to make it happen. It being a more communal effort and it being something that you just kind of build on your own because it's something you want to see and should happen. So somewhere like Southampton's, there's so much money, so much access, to things that kind of rawness. Like maybe there's a DIY space somewhere, I'd be interested in seeing it. But I think that those kind of things hold some rebellion, they hold some youth, they hold, they have all of this kind of like different energy about them. And somewhere like Southampton's is, it doesn't have the same quite feeling if, like your dad or your uncle is just going to fund this gallery for you to open. So yeah, I think it's just different worlds, Yeah,
very different worlds. So interesting out there, especially just driving 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes towards the town, but then 3 hours to get back here. Which sucks. Well, we've already been doing this for 50 minutes, which is kind of crazy. So I guess I have one more question. Hopefully the answer is no, but is there something that I should have asked you about but have not?
I mean, not that I could think of. Yeah.
Nice. That means I did a pretty good job. Okay. Then thank you so much for being on, but before you go, definitely now's your time to just tag all your social media, websites, any organizations you want people to know about or anything. This is just your time to say whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't really. You can find me. You can Google me. Just kidding. You can Wikipedia me. Both my name Nanibah, and Nani Chacon are my Instagram handles, and then it's also Nanibah Chacon is my website. So if you're interested in looking at anything more, following projects, whatever, you can look on there. So that's about awesome. It. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being on, everyone. This was another episode of Mouse House Podcast. We hope to see you guys next time, and thank you for listening.